So this was a location video about Solomon Island, which is where this dungeon is linked to. And when we jump into the game, which we'll jump right into the live game now, as you can see, we have a team of guys playing at the back of the room here, playing the game live. And cross your fingers, everything always goes well when you do live demos. So this is Solomon Island. This is one of the areas in Solomon Island, and the Draug are invading. These are these creatures that you see here. And they're continually coming out of the ocean. They're invading this area. And the player has been fighting and struggling against these guys for a while, looking for sort of some of the basis of where they came from, how they got here, what they're doing here. And the players have just found a big part of the puzzle. So this is a camp belonging to a corporation called the Orochi Group. The Orochi Group have a very hands-off approach to what's happening in this area. They're there observing, they're taking notes, they're not actually interfering with anything, and they're not helping the people who are trapped on this island. But they're not adverse to using the player for their own ends. So we're going to show you one of the missions now.
Miss Radcliffe and I have been vigorously debating our non-interventionist policy in the area.
I was on the debate team in high school.
There may be a window for us to take direct action. Well, not us, as much as you.
A cargo ship ran aground on one of the coastal islands. We have it on satellite time-lapse, coming in at the head of the Biocult Fog. That's how the creatures got here. Like a mutant cruise liner. A love boat with a vengeance. Sorry. Protocol is to wait for our raid teams to be deployed, or our pilot could airlift you now.
In such a scenario, I should mention that similar cargo ships could have been used to transport material from our sister corporations within the group. That's not a confirmation.
But someone like you could probably find a use for that material. A good use, if it was there. Which I guess I'm not telling you it is. That's how this works, right?
Quite. One more detail. I need you to sign this release form, agreeing that the group cannot be held accountable for any personal injury resulting from, but not limited to...
Sir.
It's for their own good. It's for your own good.
Right. Please keep in mind that this game is still in development, and these guys probably need some dental work, but we'll make that happen. Don't worry about that. So the player has just received a mission, and the first objective is to locate this map on the hood of this car. When the player picks this up, you can see a tactical topographical map over this island where the player is asked to go and investigate what has happened. And the Orochi Corporations has pointed out a few points of interest, and this information will be very handy for the players later on. Right now, we're going to venture forth to the wreck of the Polaris. And since we're a game in modern day and time, we travel in style with kick-ass helicopters.
Alright, so I'm sure some of you are familiar with our former games, Age of Conan and Anarchy Online. We have always had a reputation for fantastic graphics in our MMOs, and with the Secret World we're raising that bar even higher. So with our new version of the Dreamworld technology, as you can see when we arrive at the island, we have these amazing environments we can create using our fantastic engine. And indeed, we try to root everything that we design here, every part of the world design, in the modern day setting. So we've got the helicopters, and we have lights, we have the lighthouse up on the hill. You can see it up there, and it's just amazing. So in addition to the fact that it's a modern day setting visually, it's also important to remember that we can communicate as we would in the modern day. So players will receive information updates from the Orochi guy flying around in the helicopter as they play through. They'll receive information over the radio, they can receive it on cell phones, things like that.
So as you guys can see, today we have with us a group of 5 players that focuses on very different aspects of the combat in the Secret World. The masked guy with the sledgehammer will play the role of a tank for this dungeon run. He's focusing on high armor mitigation and aggro management. The girl in the pink trench coat will be our healer, focusing on something called blood magic to keep these guys alive, hopefully. The guy with the assault rifle is focusing on high-powered bullets and also some AoE grenade. He will function as a ranged DPS character with some crowd control. The guy to the right is focusing on magic, elementalism to be specific, some fire spells. Our hero character is wielding a hammer, but is focusing more on the high damage output that the hammer provides. This little group now is going to venture forth and investigate.
Alright, so when we're designing these content areas, we're thinking about, you know, what's the purpose of every placement in this game. So this is the first trash pool. Again, like we try to avoid having trash unless it has a meaning. In this case, you're fighting a Draug who's got some zombies around him. This is very important because whenever you encounter Draug in our game, you'll always encounter zombies as well. Now, the Draug themselves, if you want to dig into the legends of that, the Draug are actually the spirits of drowned Viking warriors. And yeah, so we're going to move forward now and show you how these mechanics keep getting played out through the game.
And when we teach players these mechanics that they need to worry about. Exactly. This is another thing. Like when we teach the players something like that, it's not only true for this isolated incident, it's true for the whole game. In this particular case, it's electrified water. When the player is standing in the water, he's taking a massive amount of damage, so he needs to really stay away from that when he's fighting this Draug sorceress.
Alright, so a quick word on what she is. The Draug sorceress is one of the females of the Draug race, obviously, and they're responsible for the creation of new Draug. And the way that they do that is they actually mutate zombies. And over time, those zombies will eventually turn into Draug themselves.
She fights with Draug magic. You can see from time to time she's protected by this white barrier. This is a barrier that the players can counter with certain effects that they brought. She's also spawning these thunder clouds at certain areas in this arena that the players really need to stay away from because they deal a lot of damage while keeping out of the electrical water. So this creates a really nice and dynamic fight. As you probably also can see, the players can move while casting abilities.
Alright, so the player just got a skill point. If you saw that there, the skill points are something that you spend later on to get abilities, and we'll talk a little more about that later. But right now we're going to head on up to the cliff top. I just want to point out that, again, as we approach our world design in these environments, we think about not only like the 2D space moving forward through a corridor, as a lot of games do, we also think about, you know, the 3D location, letting people move vertically, up and down, side to side, all the way through this entire 3D area.
Another thing that we're using to teach the players. Whenever the players encounter this Draug pod and they stand next to it for too long, it starts to pulse. And after a while, it explodes, dealing a lot of damage and also a knockback. But if the players are quick enough to damage them down before they get to explode, they should be all safe.
Alright, so we're coming up on the top of the cliff now. And here's where you really get to see how we take the visuals that we can get out of a modern setting and make them work in a location such as this. So here you have the wreckage of the cargo ship that crashed into the shore here. You know, debris strewn all over the place.
Identification. Cargo vessel Polaris. Reported lost in Atlantic Ocean August 14, 2007.
Alright, so if I'm going to root this in story and let you guys know, everybody's heard of the urban, or not the urban legend, but the actual myth of ghost ships. Everybody's heard about ghost ships. The Polaris is an actual ghost ship in our game. Everything is true. In this case, the Polaris disappeared 4 years ago, came back on the radar recently, crashed into this island, had a cargo of Draug. The Draug have started to convert the island into their base of operations as they take on the residents of Solomon Island, as you saw earlier. And what's happening in the game, part of the overall storyline, is that Earth herself, Gaia, is fighting back against the darkness. And this is an example of one of those mechanics.
Yeah, this is actually Gaia who has opened up an anima well. At anima wells, the players can access the anima magic, and what that allows players is to open the skill wheel. In the skill wheel, there are over 500 unique abilities, and the player can train and own all of them. In here, you find everything from elementalism to shotguns to pistols to swords to chaos magic to blood magic, everything. And every single little cell you see around here contains several abilities. So what our hero character learned in the first fight was that ranged players were at an advantage because they were able to stay out of the water and still do damage to the sorceress. So what he's doing right now is changing his hammer abilities for some elementalist abilities. The elementalist abilities lets the player damage from afar, throwing out magic and shocking players with lightning. And this is a really important aspect of the Secret World. It's about adapting to your surrounding, not being locked down to a class or to a role.
Alright, so you remember the map we picked up earlier? this is where it becomes important. This is actually the player's in-game dungeon map now. You can see all the points of interest on the map. We're going to jump ahead for time's sake. You players obviously won't be able to do this. We're going to jump ourselves ahead. We're going to check out what the Orochi meant when they wrote on the map, high biological mass warning. So this is the Varangian. The Varangian is one of the warlords leading the effort against Solomon Island. He's one of the major leaders of the Draug armies, if you will. And what Varangian means, if anybody cares to do the research, it's actually a group of Vikings who were shipwrecked near Russia over 1,000 years ago. And they went ashore and they ended up becoming berserkers, fighting in the wars, working as mercenaries. And they had a fierce reputation. So, and this does tie into the story. It actually has a meaning to the game, but we're not going to reveal everything, of course, right now.
Since this is the first dungeon and the first boss in the Secret World, the mechanics are fairly simple, but it teaches the player something really important. From time to time, the Varangian will wipe his aggro list and charge a random player. And at those times, it's really important for the tank to use his taunting abilities to regain control of the fight. As you also mentioned earlier, the Draug control the zombies, and at certain points, he will vanish into the ocean and summon zombies. And it's really important for the players to get the zombies down quickly before he reappears to maintain that level of control that they need. At this point in the fight, the Varangian is realizing that he's losing the battle, so he's retreating to an area where he feels safer. He's throwing zombies in the way of the players to slow them down, but they need to push on and see where he's going.
Alright, so you can see this location here again. The Varangian has constructed himself something of a fort out of the containers off the tanker, and he's electrified the water in this area. So you see how the mechanic that we taught the players in the very first fight, where the water was electrified, also comes into play here. So players have learned from that, and hopefully they'll know that they can use that knowledge later in this battle.
As you guys can see, he also has a new trick up his sleeve now. He can put electricity on certain areas of the containers, and the players really need to stay away from that electricity because it really hurts. So it's all about reading the surroundings, being adaptive, while still damaging him and trying to get him down. Well done, guys.
Alright, so we're gonna take the pace down a little bit here. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're including the puzzle elements of the game into our instances as well. So you may have heard about some of the ARG style stuff we've been doing outside the dungeons, but now I'm going to talk about how it works here. So in the cinematic, the Orochi guys mentioned the fact that, you know, this might be transporting some sensitive material. The players have located a glowing green crate, and when they try to open the crate to get fat loots, they find out that they need to enter a code. And so this is where we ask players, just like we do in the rest of the game, to think outside the box. In this case, it's actually literally outside of the box. There's a code on the shipping container. And if you go online, find the right website, find the shipping log, find the manifest, you can actually input that code, locate the cargo, locate the code to open the box that was inside this shipping container out in the real world. So this is just another sort of way that we're including the elements of the puzzle system into these areas of the game. However, we're not going to spoil what's in the crate today, of course, because we don't want to ruin it for the players of the game later. Alright, so now we're going to jump ahead, I think. Yep. So we're going to skip ahead a little more and jump ahead to... The players have been moving towards the aberrant psychic signal source. And they've been moving towards that all the way through the dungeon, trying to locate its source. So here we are in the shadow of the ship itself. And as we move forward, I'll just say a word about the zombies themselves that the players have been fighting. This is the former crew of the Polaris. The Draug raised them from the dead and forced them to pilot the ship. And we move forward now, we're going to progress into the belly of the beast.
And just a couple of words on progression in the Secret World, because this is something we're really excited about. We have two forms of character progression, both vertical and horizontal progression. Vertical progression is something players are used to, and it comes in the form of items. You get better items, you get stronger and more powerful. You do more damage, you do more healing, you do better armor mitigation, you're better at crowd controlling. But equally important is the horizontal progression. As I mentioned, the players can learn all of the 500 abilities. But learning all of those doesn't necessarily make the player more powerful, it makes it more versatile. Whenever you're presented with a challenge, there are more ways to get around it, and you choose how you want to do that.
Alright, so we're moving forward now, getting closer to the source of the psychic signal. We're going to find out in a minute exactly what that means. Someone was a bit slow with destroying the pods there. Alright, you've probably noticed the skill point thing ticking up as the players play. This is the currency they use to purchase abilities. So this is the Primordial Dweller. This is the source of the strong psychic signature. This is the mastermind behind the attacks on Solomon Island. The players are going to need to use every single mechanic that they've seen throughout the dungeon to be able to take this guy down.
As you guys can see, he's still protected with that magical barrier that the players saw in the first fight. We need to counter that with certain abilities. In addition to that, he spawns this poisonous ink on certain areas. And the players need to move away from that because they will erupt for massive damage. Also, the players will now encounter the mobile pods. They will run out with exploding pods on their back and charge the players. And explode if the players don't deal with them. They either need to damage them down quickly or crowd control them. In addition to that, he also summons these octopods to defend him. They spawn in groups of 3 and 4. They also need to be damaged down or crowd controlled for the players to be successful. And as this fight continues, it gets more and more intense. More of these elements come into play.
Like chaos, but there's nothing wrong with a good slice of chaos in the game. The players have managed to take down the Primordial Dweller, and once again, just in keeping with our setting, you know, the helicopter comes in to pick them up, and they're ready to go back to civilization for a little bit of R&R. Take a break. Good work, guys. We're relatively certain that doesn't mean anything important. And yes, the players do get to fight this guy, but we're not spoiling that fight for you guys right now.